जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य श्री His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Samstapakacharya Savior of the whole world Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 13, the dynasty of Maharaj Nimi. Text number 4. Shishya Vyatikramam Vikshya Shishyavytikramam Vikshya Tam Nirvartya Agataha Guruho Tam Nirvartyagato Guruho Ashapat Patatat Dehaha Ashapat Patatat Deho Nimehe Pandita Maninaha Nime Pandita Maninaha Shishyavytikramam Vikshya Tam Nirvartyagato Guruhu Ashapat Patatat Deho Nime Pandita Maninaha. Shishyavytikramam Vikshya Ashapat Patatat Deho Nime Pandita Maninaha. Shishyavytikramam Vikshya Tam Nirvartyagato Guruho Ashapat Patatat Deho Nime Pandita Maninaha. Shishyavytikramam Vikshya Tam Nirvartyagato Guruho Ashapat Patatat Deho Nime Pandita Maninaha. Shishyavytikramam. The disciples' deviation from the order of the Guru. Viksha, observing. Tam, the performance of yajna by Indra. Nirvartya, after finishing. Agataha, when he returned, Guruhu Vasishta Muni, Ashapat, he cursed Nimi Maharaj. Patatat, made fall down. Dehaha, the material body. Nimehe, of Maharaj Nimi. Panditama Ninaha, who considers himself so learned as to disobey the order of his spiritual master. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After completing the sacrificial performance for King Indra, the spiritual master Vasishta returned and found that his disciple Maharaj Nimi had disobeyed his instructions. Thus Vasishta cursed him, saying, "May the material body of Nimi, who considers himself learned, immediately fall." Please repeat this translation after me. After completing the sacrificial performance for King Indra, the spiritual master Vasishta returned and found that his disciple Maharaj Nimi had disobeyed his instructions. Thus Vasishta cursed him, saying, "May the material body of Nimi, who considers himself learned, immediately fall." Text 5, I'll read by myself. Nimihi pratidadau shapam gurave adharmavartine tavapi patata deho lobha dharmamajanataha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. For unnecessarily cursing him when he had committed no offense, Maharaj Nimi counter-cursed his spiritual master. For the sake of getting contributions from the King of Heaven, he said, "You have lost your religious intelligence. Therefore, I pronounce this curse. Your body also will fall." Purport. The religious principle for a Brahmana is that he should not be greedy at all. In this case, however, for the sake of more lucrative remunerations from the King of Heaven, Vasishta neglected Maharaj Nimi's request on this planet. And when Nimi performed the sacrifices with other priests, Vasishta unnecessarily cursed him. When one is infected by contaminated activities, his power, material or spiritual, reduces. Although Vasishta was the spiritual master of Maharaj Nimi, because of his greed, he became fallen. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Vishnupadaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama. This chapter describes the dynasty of Maharaj Nimi. Who's Maharaj Nimi? He is one of the sons of Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku is the son of Vaivasvata Manu. Vaivasvata Manu is the son of the sun god. So Vaivasvata Manu is ruling in this Manvantara, the post of Manu. Manus give religious principles for mankind so that they may follow the relevant principles and elevate themselves to self-realization. Now the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu is being described in this 9th canto specifically. That many great devotees appeared in this dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu. Even Lord Krishna appeared during the period of this Vaivasvata Manu, the present Manvantara. That is the Dwapar Yuga, just before the present Kali Yuga, Krishna appeared. So, great devotees and even the Supreme Lord himself have appeared in this dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu. Therefore, the Bhagavatam is describing the dynasty. Simply because Bhagavatam is describing the appearance of the Supreme Lord in his various incarnations and the appearance of great devotees at different times in different families. So the description is given that Maharaj Nini, when he was ruling this earth planet, he once undertook some sacrificial performance. In the former ages, the kings used to perform sacrifices for the welfare of the citizens according to the scriptural directions. So Nimi decided to perform sacrifices for the welfare of the entire world, of all the citizens. So he requested Vasishta, the great sage Vasishta, that Vasishta may take the post of the chief priest. Such sacrifices require qualified brahmanas to properly chant mantras and properly offer the ingredients in the sacrifice. Hota, Gata, Advaryu and Brahma. 4 kinds of priests are required for a Vedic sacrifice. And these posts are to be occupied by qualified brahmanas. And the qualifications of the brahmanas are also given in the scriptures. That the brahmana who chants the mantras should be expert in chanting the mantra according to meter and accent. Chanting according to meter and accent is necessary when one performs a fire sacrifice according to Vedic directions. Whereas chanting of the verses in the Puranas, Itihasas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, or even the Bhagavad Purana, these are not dependent on accurate chanting according to meter and accent. So therefore, there is a restriction on who can chant the Vedic mantras. Only qualified brahmanas can chant the Vedic mantras. An example of the Vedic mantra is Gayatri mantra. Gayatri mantra can be chanted only by duly qualified Brahmanas. But the purpose of chanting Gayatri mantra, which is self-realization, is achieved by simply chanting the mantras which are described in the Puranas or Itihasas. The Puranas and Itihasas contain verses which are directly glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So any verse that is found in the Puranas and Itihasas can be chanted by any person without the necessity of any qualification. And such chanting, even if it is done irregularly, supposing there is a mistake in the chanting, there is not going to be any adverse effect. There will be no reaction for wrong chanting. An example of reaction for wrong chanting is given in the Bhagavatam itself. There was one Brahmana by name Tvashta. So Tvashta's son was appointed by Indra to perform one sacrifice. Tvashta's son, he performed the sacrifice. Since he was appointed by Indra, he should have offered oblations only for the interest of the Devatas headed by Indra. But because this son of Tvashta, Vishwarupa, he was related to the demigods from the side of his father. He was also related to the demons from his mother's side. So when he was offering sacrifices, oblations in the sacrifice, when he was offering oblations, loudly he would chant, Indraya Swaha, Agnaye Swaha, and offer oblation. But silently he would chant mantras for offering oblations to the demons also. So Indra found out that this Vishwarupa, he is offering oblations secretly to the demons, while I have appointed him as the priest for offering oblations on behalf of the demigods. So Indra became angry and simply killed this Vishwarupa by cutting off his head. Tvashta became angry. How can Indra do this? So then Tvashta performed another sacrifice in which he wanted to produce a son who would be competent to kill Indra. Because Indra is very powerful. Not easy for anyone to kill Indra like that. So while offering oblations in that fire, to have a son who would be competent to kill Indra, Tvashta made a mistake in chanting the mantra. Indrashatro Vivardhasva. This is the mantra he was chanting. So some mistake happened in chanting this mantra. Instead of producing a son from the sacrifice who would be competent to kill Indra, by offering oblations, by wrong chanting, mistake in the chanting. He produced a son who would be killed by Indra because Indra became more powerful. Anybody can chant verses from the Bhagavad Gita, especially the verses in the Gita, in the 11th chapter, where Arjuna offers prayers to Krishna. 11th chapter, verse number 35 to 46. So these verses are the best prayers one can offer to Krishna. So they are prayers offered by the pure devotee Arjuna. So any prayers offered by pure devotees, which are mentioned in the Puranas and Itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavata, Padma Purana, Vishnu Purana, Garuda Purana, these can be chanted by anybody. And if your intention is to please the Supreme Lord, Krishna, and you chant these prayers offered by pure devotees, even if there is a mistake in your chanting, Krishna will give you full credit as if you have chanted accurately, correctly. Because Krishna understands the intention and the purpose. And Krishna does not go just by the literal pronunciation. So, in this Kali Yuga, it is recommended that you should chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is given in the Brihanaradiya Purana. It's also mentioned in the Kali Santarana Upanishad. But this mantra is especially meant for people of Kali Yuga to be chanted for self-realization. And this mantra does not require any qualification to be chanted. So coming to this point that Nimi requested Vasishta to occupy the post of the chief priest for his sacrifice. Vasishta replied, "My dear Maharaj Nimi, I have already accepted the same post in a sacrifice which was begun by Indra." So Vasishta did not want to lose the dakshina that Indra had promised for performing his sacrifice. So Vasishta told Nimi that you wait till I return after finishing that sacrifice, and then I will perform this sacrifice also. So saying this, Vasishta went away to perform sacrifice for Indra. And then Nimi, because he was a self-realized soul, he was no ordinary king, he was a Rajarishi, saintly king, he was self-realized. So he considered that this life in this human form of body is very, very flickering. Any moment death can come. So I don't want to lose time waiting for Vasishta to return. That too, Vasishta is going from the earth to the heavenly planet of Indraloka. So it will take a long time for him to return. So better I go ahead with the sacrifice by engaging other Brahmins, other qualified Brahmins. So he performed the sacrifice with other Brahmanas, And Vasishtha returned and saw that this Nimi has disobeyed me, his spiritual master. So Vasishtha became angry and he said, may the material body of Nimi, who considers himself learned, immediately fall. He could understand that Nimi had gone ahead with performing the sacrifice with some other priest because Nimi did not want to wait. So Vasishtha thought that this Nimi has disobeyed his guru, so he deserves to be punished. And therefore Vasishtha cursed Nimi. But Nimi was no ordinary king. So when he realized that this Vasishtha is unnecessarily cursing him for no fault of his, he didn't commit any offense. So Nimi also counter-cursed Vasishtha that you are greedy for getting remuneration from Indra. Obviously in the heavenly planet he'll get much more remuneration than what can be given on the earth. So therefore, you have lost your religious intelligence. And I also curse you that your body also will fall. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, the religious principle for a Brahmana is that he should not be greedy at all. Should never be greedy. That is a qualification of a Brahmana, a primary qualification. Should not be greedy for money. In the Vedic culture, Brahmanas, in order to protect themselves against being carried away by greed, they keep themselves in a poverty-stricken condition voluntarily. Voluntarily. An example is given in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. Sudama Brahmana. He was the friend of Krishna in the Gurukul. Sandipani Muni's Gurukul. Krishna was studying. Sudama also was studying there. So Sudama used to keep himself in a poverty-stricken condition, not because he wanted to starve, not because he wanted to make a show of being austere, no. Just because he was enlightened that a Brahmana should never lose control of his senses. If there is an opportunity for a Brahmana to fast, he should undertake that fasting and control his senses and be fixed up in his business of self-realization. Because self-realization is never possible for one whose senses are uncontrolled. And in this material world, there is every opportunity for sense gratification. This material world is called Vishaya Sagara. It's an ocean of sense objects. Everywhere you look around you, there are so many sense objects. Because everything is made up of these 5 elements, Pancha Bhuta. And the combinations of Pancha Bhuta, there is some object which has got a particular shape or a particular smell or particular taste or particular sound, like that. So different living entities, according to their different inclinations for enjoyment, they take pleasure in enjoying different sense objects. What is considered rubbish and waste for the human beings, even for the other animals also. For the hog, that is very, very relishable, very tasty. Stool of other animals or even humans, for a hog, it is very tasty, very relishable for its tongue. So therefore, this material world is a dangerous place, because there are so many sense objects. And different people take pleasure in different kinds of sense gratification. So there are so many different varieties of sense objects for different people. Just like human beings, they are meant to maintain their body by eating vegetables, fruits, grains, milk, sugar, etc. But because of the desire to satisfy the tongue by eating something other than these vegetarian food stuff, people indulge in eating meat, fish, eggs, and all kinds of other forbidden items, forbidden for human beings. They don't care even if they are sinful. They commit sinful activity. They eat all kinds of non-vegetarian foods, simply for the sake of satisfying their tongue. That's all, nothing else. So this material world is a dangerous place. So especially the Brahmanas in the Varnashrama system, they should be controlled in their senses. Shamo, damo, tapas, shaucham, shantir, arjavam, evacha, jnanam, vijnanam, astikyam, brahma, karma, svabhavaja. Bhagavad Gita clearly describes the 9 primary qualifications of a Brahman. One is working like a Brahman, Brahma Karma. His occupational duty is according to his acquired nature. So those who are sattvic by nature, they should perform Brahmanical duties or perform Brahmanical occupation. Yajana, yajana, patana, patana, dana, pratigraha. These are the occupational engagements for a Brahmana. But even though a Brahmana performs yajna for others as a priest, but he should never be greedy. So when Nimi is requesting, kindly occupy the post of chief priest and help me with performing this yajna, Vasishta is considering that Indra also has requested, but Indra's remuneration is more. So first I will do Indra's sacrifice, then I will do this Nimi's sacrifice. Nimi can wait. So he misused his position, his power, simply for the sake of satisfying his greed for dakshina, for wealth. So this is a fall down for a Brahmana. It's a fall down for a Brahmana. So when he made this, due to this consideration, he decided to first perform the sacrifice for Indra and make Nimi wait. He is fallen, already is fallen. Vasishta is fallen. But Nimi did not object to Vasishta performing Indra's sacrifice first. Nimi did not object. Nimi decided, okay, he is not available. I'll engage somebody else and perform the sacrifice. As it is, he is greedy for getting dakshina from Indra. And his false ego, ahankara, is that this Nimi is my disciple. He should wait. Why is he not waiting? He is disobeying me. I told him to wait. He is not waiting. So for disobeying me, I will curse him. Let me show him my Brahmanical power. Brahmanas, by performing austerities, they get some power. That power they get is supposed to be used for spiritual advancement, for self-realization. But sometimes Brahmanas misuse their power, acquired power, for cursing somebody else. So this Vasishtha, when he cursed Nimi, it was a fall down, further fall down. Already he was fallen because of his greed for Indra's dakshina. And then again he fell down when he cursed Nimi. So therefore, it is said here, a Brahmana should never be greedy under any circumstances. In this case, however, for the sake of more lucrative remunerations from the King of Heaven, Vasishtha neglected Maharaj Nimi's request on this planet. So he thought, oh, this Nimi can wait. Because the time scale operating on the earth is different than the time scale operating on the heavenly planets. Even if Vasishtha did not want to refuse Indra, he could have quickly finished Nimi's sacrifice and then gone to attend to Indra. Actually, Indra can wait. But Vasishtha is thinking, if Indra does not wait, he engages somebody else, I will lose dakshina from Indra. Because he was greedy, he did not want to lose that. Therefore, he decided to first do Indra's sacrifice. So therefore, Vasishtha unnecessarily cursed Maharaj Nimi. Unnecessarily cursed. No fault of Nimi. He cursed. So, Srila Prabhupada says here, when one is infected by contaminated activities, this is a contamination in Vasishtha. One thing is greed for money, and second thing is his false ego is hurt. So he is unnecessarily cursing Nimi. So then, when one is infected by contaminated activities, one's material or spiritual power reduces. So Vasishtha lost his acquired power and he became fallen. Although Vasishtha was a spiritual master of Maharaj Nimi, because of his greed he became fallen. He became fallen. So he had to fall down from his position because of his greed. Generally, a disciple will never curse the spiritual master, always be respectful. But in this case, Maharaj Nimi was no ordinary person. Out of etiquette, he showed respect to Nimi, to Vasishtha as a Brahmana, because Nimi was in the position of a Kshatriya. Just like when Sudama Brahmana visited Krishna, Sudama knew Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he was a devotee of the Supreme Lord. But still Krishna received Sudama so very respectfully. Krishna washed the feet of Sudama. Why? Because Krishna wanted to teach how a Kshatriya should actually respect a Brahmana. Krishna was playing the part of a Kshatriya, so he was perfectly following the Kshatriya dharma. Sudama also, he accepted, understanding that Krishna is teaching how a Kshatriya should receive a Brahmana. So Sudama did not refuse. But within his heart he knew, actually Krishna should not be washing my feet. I should be washing Krishna's feet. But he accepted, understanding. Same thing, Narad Muni, when he was visiting Krishna in Dwaraka, Narada was received very respectfully by Krishna as a Brahmana. Narad Muni was visiting as a Brahmana. Krishna is playing the part of Kshatriya. So Krishna worshipped Narad Muni. Narada is accepting, understanding that Krishna is teaching by his example how a Kshatriya should receive a Brahmana. So in this case, Vasishta became fallen because of two reasons. One is because of his greed, and secondly because of unnecessarily cursing a faultless, self-realized Rajarshi, Maharaj Nimi. So we will hear what happened to Nimi and what happened to Vasishta. Later on we will read about that in the later portion. But the lesson for us is that we should not use our power that we have due to practicing Krishna consciousness to curse someone else. There are examples in the Bhagavatam that Maharaj Ambarish, when he was cursed by Durvasa Muni, though Ambarish Maharaj was faultless, he tolerated. Another example of a great devotee, Chitraketu, when he was cursed by Mother Parvati, even though he was not at fault, he was faultless. Chitraketu was faultless, still Mother Parvati cursed him. So Chitraketu came to Mother Parvati after hearing the curse, paid his respectful obeisances, begged forgiveness, and said, I'll accept the curse. It's my mistake. Even though it is not his mistake, he accepted the mistake. So this is the behavior of a devotee. That is why it is said, devotees are even above the Brahmanas. Though the scriptures say the Brahmanas are the topmost persons in the Varnashrama system. So if there is a Vaishnava who is not in the position of a Brahmana, a Vaishnava who is a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra or a Chandala, outcast, Mlecha, Yavana. There is a verse in the scriptures, Chandalopi Vijashrestha, Hari Bhakti Parayana. If a person born in a family of Chandalas, if he takes to devotional service, then by his devotional progress, he becomes greater than the best of the Brahmanas. He becomes greater than the best of the Brahmanas. Vijashrestha. Whereas a Brahmana who does not properly show respect to a Vaishnava or wrongly curses a devotee or a faultless person, immediately the Brahmana becomes fallen, however austere he might have been, however much Brahmanical power he might have. He loses his Brahmanical power, he becomes fallen, he becomes degraded. So, therefore, scriptures are warning us, accept Diksha only from a Vaishnava. Shatkarma nipuno vipro mantra tantra visharadaha avaishnavo gururna syat. Even if there is a very qualified Brahmana who's expert in chanting mantras, mantra tantra, and expert in performing sacrifices, if he is not a Vaishnava, don't accept Diksha from him. Don't accept him as your spiritual master. On the other hand, scriptures, this verse says, Vaishnavas swapacho guruhu. If there is a Vaishnava, even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, Chandala family, still he should be accepted as a spiritual master just because he is a Vaishnava. This is scriptural direction. So therefore, Vaishnavas are the topmost personalities, even greater than the most qualified Brahmana. Though many times Vaishnavas always take a humble position according to their social status. Just like Ambarish Maharaj, he considered himself as a Kshatriya and Durvasa as a Brahmana. So he accepted Durvasa's curse. He did not retaliate, even though he was faultless. So like that, a devotee is always tolerant. Always tolerant. Tikshava karunika surada sarvadehinam ajata shatrava shanta sadhava sadhu bhushanam. Yudhishthira Maharaj, he is dharma personified. He knows all the religious principles. Even though the Kauravas, they faulted Yudhishthira on many occasions, even though Yudhishthira was not at fault. Yudhishthira accepted whatever faults were wrongly pointed out by Duryodhana. Yudhishthira accepted. He was tolerant. Tolerant. But Krishna did not tolerate Duryodhana's offenses against the Pandavas, especially against Yudhishthira. So Krishna punished the Kauravas. In the battle of Kurukshetra, even though the Kauravas were many times more powerful, they had the best of Maharathis on their side. They had Bhishma and Drona on their side. But still the Kauravas did not win the battle of Kurukshetra simply because Duryodhana was offensive against the Pandavas. Duryodhana unnecessarily gave so much trouble to the Pandavas. So Krishna decided that all the Kauravas are going to die in the battle of Kurukshetra. Forget about winning. They could not even save their lives, even though they had the best of generals, Maharathis on their side. They could not even save their own lives. All of them died in the battle. Against all odds. So, devotee's position is like that. And the characteristic of a devotee is titikshava, always tolerant. Devotee is always tolerant. But Krishna does not tolerate, so we should remember this. Even if I offend a devotee may not take offense. Krishna is not going to tolerate. So therefore, we should never offend a devotee. And as devotees, we should also practice tolerance. That is very pleasing to Krishna. If devotees tolerate, then Krishna is very pleased. Krishna wants devotees to be tolerant. So this is the lesson to be learnt from this particular incident. I'll stop here. Untitled Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Some announcements. We'll be having Japa Yajna